that we decided to choose for this project is The Incredibles. The Incredibles is basically a movie about an undercover superhero family that stops fighting crime after they decide to settle in for a little bit. However, the husband of the family decides that it would be fun for him to start fighting crime again, so he decides to take a mission on an island which later puts his family in jeopardy. I would say that the theme of our presentation is the way people present themselves and the way people disclose information about themselves is very important and can even affect other people. And the person who we're going to focus on the most in this story is the protagonist, whose name is Bob, or also known as Mr. Incredible, and how he interacts with members of his family and also people that work with him as well. I would say that the biggest cultural influence on this movie would be the sort of traditional family culture that seems to have taken place within the Incredibles family. I would say that a good example of this would be the wedding scene in the movie. It's a very traditional, taking place in a church and such things, and it typically exemplifies the normal marriage in American society. And they also behave as a traditional family as well. The father works and the mother takes care of the house. Both the children go to school and they try to live normal lives while trying their best to hide their superpowers. And I would say that their superpowers or their superhero-like qualities would be the co-culture within that relationship, because after all, it does have a big influence on the culture itself. For example, when Mr. Incredible decided that he would try to save people in the burned-down building, there was a bit of animosity between the wife and the husband, because the wife would argue that they would be putting the family in danger if they would do such a thing. And also there was another example where Bob tried to get Mirage's contact information so that they could do favors. And that also hurt their relationship a lot, and it actually ended up putting the family in danger. And I think that's the reason why the wife in the family has been trying really hard to be a normal family, not a superhero family, because it could put the family in danger. Perception in this movie does have a big impact, and I would say that perception is how other people see other people. So for example, when Mr. Incredible's boss was thrown through a cubicle from Mr. Incredible himself, he was being perceived as quite strange or even quite dangerous. And I think because he was being perceived as dangerous because of his superpowers, he tries his best to make sure that he looks as much as a normal family as possible. And I think that's also why perception has such a big influence on the movie. And I also think that's why they try their best to be as much as a normal family as possible, because they want to be perceived as just a normal family. Presented self and perceiving self has a very important role in this movie. Presented self is basically how you want to be presented as, and perceiving self is how you want to be seen as. And in this movie, Mr. Incredible, or also known as Bob, presents himself to be as a sort of normal person who's just a bit buff for some strange reason. And he wants to be seen as basically just another normal person living a normal life with a normal wife and normal children, although he is a superhero. And unfortunately, he tries his best to be perceived as not being a superhero, so he tries his best to hide that as much as he can. But when he's with other people in the relationship, for example, Frozone, who are also superheroes, or his wife, he can present himself as a superhero and would rather be more informal in tone when speaking with other superheroes, because he happens to understand them and he happens to be understood by them as well. So it depends who he's with, but overall I would say that when he's with just people that he doesn't know, he'd present himself as a normal person, and when he's with people that he knows, he would rather present himself as being known to be a superhero rather than just a normal person. So it really depends on the context in which he's speaking to somebody.
I've chosen the character Bob because I believe he's one of the characters who has the most recognizable displays of self-concept, self-esteem, and self-fulfilling prophecy in the movie. First, I want to make sure you have an understanding of what these terms mean. Self-concept is defined as a relatively stable set of principles you hold for yourself. In short, it means who you think you are. Self-concept is not limited to your physical looks, but also your likes, your dislikes, your emotional state, and your societal role. Next, we have self-esteem. Self-esteem is defined as one's evaluation of self-worth. And lastly, we have self-fulfilling prophecy, which is defined as a person's expectations of an event and his or her behavior based on those expectations, which makes the event more likely to occur. Now, how do these things apply to Bob? In the beginning of the movie, Bob's self-concept was that he was a strong person because strength was his superpower. Bob would knock down walls, he'd pick up cars, he'd pull trees out of the ground. In the beginning of the movie, Bob's self-esteem was high. He managed to help with multiple incidents, including the police pursuit, a suicidal jumper, the purse snatcher, a bank robber, all before attending his own wedding. Bob's confirmation of his high self-esteem was given to the viewers by his repeated saying, "I still have time." After the superhero ban was implemented and Bob started his new job at AssureCare, his self-esteem diminished. He became unhappy, and his unhappiness transferred to his home life. Bob didn't engage with his family, and he also became more distant. After Bob accepted the job with Mirage, he was able to start working as a superhero again. His high self-esteem had been restored, and Bob became happier. He started working out again, looking more confident, started to show more affection to his wife. Lastly, let's look at Bob's self-fulfilling prophecy. Bob has a natural calling to be a superhero, obviously because he was given superpowers. Once his ability to be a superhero had been taken away due to the superhero ban, Bob began meeting with Lucius, aka Frozone, on Wednesdays. Sometimes they would listen to the police scanner, and they would help them without being seen. In the end of the movie, Bob was able to fulfill his destiny as being a superhero alongside his family again, due to his determination never to give up. Impression management is a way in which you present yourself around certain people based on your relationship with them. One example of this is when Bob was working for InsureCare and he tried to maintain his image as a standard employee who denies applications the way the company requires him to. Bob was being loud and vocal about denying an elderly lady her loan application. However, he was quietly giving her information that would exploit the loopholes within the company that would allow her to get her loan approved. Bob also used a collaborative strategy technique by having the lady leave and pretend to be crying and be upset about not getting her loan approved. The collaborative technique is when an improvised scene is created so that both the characters match. This strategy was effective in the way the lady got information for loopholes that could get her loan approved. However, this wasn't the first time that Bob has done this. His boss did catch on, and he addressed the issue of the number of appeals that Bob has compared to the rest of the associates. There are many examples of impression management techniques used by the entire family throughout the movie. The biggest strategy was that the whole family had to pretend to be a normal family and not a family of superheroes. This proved to be difficult as Bob was witnessed lifting up a car by the kid in the neighborhood, and Dash was recording on camera, placing the attack on his teacher's chair. Lucky for him, he was fast enough not to get caught. The impression management by this whole family was effective because outside of the superheroes and the lady who makes their outfits, no one else knew who they were because they wore masks. In conclusion, I think that the relationships depicted in the movie depict the same typical relationships that we see on a day-to-day basis. Looking at this movie now with an understanding of how we as a people use different techniques like impression management, it's intriguing to witness how much impression management we use on a daily to have relationships with the people that we choose to surround ourselves with.